In today's episode, we're speaking to Darryl Stickel. Darryl is the world's leading expert on trust with over 22 years of experience. His PhD, Building Trust in Hostile Environments from Duke University, established him as a global leader for governments and businesses and NGOs on practical approaches to building trust, and recently completed his book, Building Trust, Exceptional Leadership in an Uncertain World. So let's speak to Darryl and find out how he changed his life by changing his mindset. Let's find out. And if you want to upgrade your money mindset, then click on the link at www.millionairefoundations.com and let's upgrade your mindset. Welcome. This is Gull, your money mindset expert. And today I'm so excited. We have the amazing Darryl Stickel. Welcome, Darryl.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us, Darryl. Darryl, everyone's heard your intro. They know how fabulous you are, but please, in your own words, tell everybody what it is that you do.
So I am one of the world's leading experts on the topic of trust. I teach people how to build stronger relationships.
Fabulous. So Darryl, talk us through. You have a very, very interesting journey. As I was looking through your website and looking through your bio, etc. Talk us through, how did you come to being the leading in the world as well? So how did you get to this stage? What led you here? What was your journey?
That's a really good question, and I try to talk through. I released a book, and I talk through my story about how I got here. I was born and raised in a small town in northern Canada, and fairly harsh conditions. It was a fairly isolated community, about 13,000 people. Minus 40 was not uncommon.
Wow.
And so winters were hard, and there was a sense of community. People just had to pull together. You didn't drive by somebody on the side of the road because you knew it might be you someday and you need someone to stop and help you. And so I grew up in that background and with this belief that, the strong should protect the weak, and that if you could help people, you should. And so there was this sort of ingrained sense of wanting to help people, wanting to have impact, be positive, those kinds of things. I grew up playing hockey, and when I was 17, I was playing at a fairly high level, and I got attacked by a fan with a club and beaten unconscious.
Wow.
Yeah, and then a player attacked me after they pulled me out of the crowd, and according to one of my teammates, I stopped breathing 3 times on the way to the hospital.
Wow. So, why did they attack you, if you don't mind me asking, and the player too? What was the cause of this? Yeah.
So we were playing in an even more remote community. We were beating the home team. And we had fewer players than they did, so they decided that their best strategy was to try to fight us out of the game, to run us out of players. And so the game got rough. Tensions got high, and I was too close to the boards. There was a gap in the glass where the gate was, and a guy just reached out and grabbed me and pulled me halfway over the boards, and he had brought a club with him. I was the team captain. And we were 17, 18-year-olds playing in a junior league, which meant that we were playing against guys up to 21. And it led to a bench clearing brawl. As they were carrying me out of the rink, people were throwing beer bottles at me. My team went into the stands. It was just an absolute gong show.
Wow. Wow. I mean, things like that happen even now? That's just...
Well, this was in the 80s, 1983, 84.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm legally blind. So as I was growing up, I knew that my vision was going to deteriorate. And so I had planned on training my brain so that I could think for a living, because there were so many things that weren't going to be possible for me, right? Like I wasn't going to be an airline pilot. I wasn't going to be a long haul truck driver. There were a lot of things I was not going to be.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden I had such a severe concussion. I had the attention span of a fruit fly. I went from being on the honor roll to just not being able to pay attention at all. Um,
Because of the head injury.
yeah. And so now I have that experience of feeling like such a profound sense of loss and feeling helpless and hopeless. Um, and it provoked an even stronger sense of empathy within me because now I had experienced some real struggles. And so the first 2 years after the incident, I kept getting concussions because we didn't know a lot about them. I kept playing hockey. I played college hockey. Um, I kept getting knocked out, and I just did really poorly. I tried to go to college. I failed everything. Um, so I transferred to the University of Victoria and started studying psychology. And people would just sit down next to me on the bus and say, I'm really having a hard time. Complete strangers would just start to open up to me. And I thought, I wonder what's causing that. What is it that's provoking that in people? And so I also thought if this is going to keep happening, maybe I should get paid for this.
You might as well.
So I started down the path towards becoming a clinical psychologist. And so I worked with families in crisis and troubled teens and street kids and worked on crisis lines and all those things to try to hone these skills and become better equipped to become a clinical psychologist. And I got partway down that path, and I realized that a lot of the families I was working with, a lot of the folks I was working with were just stuck. They were doing the best they could. But even if you could see a path forward for them, they struggled to get from A to B.
Yeah.
And I thought, this will drive me insane. I can see the path forward. I can see a place where you could actually be happier, have a more functional life, and you can't get there, right? The wins are so infrequent. And so I shifted and went into public administration, started studying public admin, and did a master's degree in public administration, worked in native land claims in British Columbia. And so we're settle claims from within indigenous populations. And they would ask me these deep philosophical questions of government, or question they asked me was, how do we convince a group of people that we've shafted for over 100 years they should trust us? And I was like, wow, that's a really good question.
That's a really good question. Yes.
And I said, we're in government, right? Like, how are we supposed to convince anyone? Because we can't make promises that hold governments that follow us accountable.
Exactly.
And so, I said, maybe it would help if we were trustworthy. And that didn't go over nearly as well as one might hope. And so
governments are one thing that's not trustworthy.
They struggle, right?
Yeah.
It's and we have the wrong incentive structures in place. Like, we're not getting the leaders we want. We're getting the ones we're stuck with.
Yeah. Well, the ones we would want don't come forward because they don't follow the agenda for a lot of the time. So they don't get the funding. They don't move ahead. So people like, I'm not going to say the names now on this podcast, but yeah, the current leaders, especially in Canada at the moment, there's lots of.
We get people who are self-involved. A lot of people.
Exactly. So I think that's probably the better word, self-involved. And
yeah, they're narcissists, right?
Yeah, and they push the agenda. They push the agenda for some other beings. Yes, that's not the highest good for the community at large.
Right. And the people that we would actually want to lead us say, why would I put my family through that?
Yeah, exactly.
They actually care more about their family than just themselves.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what we want. We want someone who cares about others.
Yeah.
And so I shifted again, and I went to Duke and did my doctoral thesis on building trust in hostile environments at the business school there.
Okay.
And I had the good fortune of having a couple of folks on my committee, and life makes sense in retrospect, right? Well,
always,
when we look back,
always in hindsight.
when things are happening, it just seems like chaos.
Yeah, but Kierkegaard was, I think, the one who first said that was, life makes sense backwards, but has to be lived forwards.
Yeah.
And so it feels now like there was some sort of grand plan or intention for this whole thing, because I ended up at Duke, and the year I showed up, a guy named Sim Sitkin showed up, and he was one of the leading experts on trust at the time in academia. The year after, a woman named Karen Cook showed up, and she's another one of the world's leading experts on trust in terms of academia. And they were both on my committee. And after I finished my doctoral thesis, they sat me down and they said, okay, so we had a conversation between the two of us when you first came to us and said, hey, I'm going to look at building trust in hostile environments. And we said, too big, too complex. He never solves it. We'll give him 6 months. And then he'll come crawling back to us and we'll let him chisel off a little piece of this, and that'll be his thesis. And they said, 6 months in, you were so far beyond us, we couldn't help anymore. All we could do was sit and watch. And they said, here we are 2 years later. We think you've solved it. And so I left Duke, went to McKinsey and Company, big management consulting firm, and started applying the concepts that I developed. And McKinsey said, well, you got really good client hands. You're great with clients. And so we're going to send you to the worst places possible. So I'd go to places where there had been strikes, where there was a hostile takeover going on, where people weren't getting along or didn't want us there. And had some amazing experiences. And was getting to apply the model I'd developed and see it actually take hold. And I was learning so much. And then in 2001, I was on my way to a client site in a cab, and the cab rear-ended another vehicle, and I ended up with post-concussion syndrome. I had probably my 10th or, I've lost count, but it's at least 10 concussions. And I didn't bounce back the way that I would have liked. And so I ended up with pretty significant fatigue. For the first couple of years, there was real problems with memory and concentration. I couldn't work 80 hours a week anymore, that's for sure. That's what I was doing at McKinsey. And so I ended up starting my own little company called Trust Unlimited. And one of my former colleagues came to me and he said, look, I'm head of strategy for a mutual fund company now. Just come talk to us. And so I find myself in front of 400 people talking about strategic competitive advantage, sustainable competitive advantage. And I said, that means you do something better than your competitors that they can't copy. I said, you don't do anything I can't copy. I said, you're a mutual fund company. You have to be transparent. I buy 1 share of every fund you have. Now I know how they're all built. I can sell what you sell at a discount because I don't have to pay the fund advisors.
Yeah.
And the CEO looked like I'd hit him in the forehead with a sledgehammer. I said, the only thing you can do is build deep, long-term relationships with your customers.
Yeah.
And they said, that's it. That's our strategy. And so they paid me to build a workshop out of my thesis. And that was the first training I did. I trained everybody. I did problem solving and coaching and, trained the sales staff, the marketing team, worked with the senior executives. And after 18 months, they hired a professional survey firm. And they found out that trust was the primary driver of the sales decision and that they were dramatically more trusted than any of their competitors, which hadn't been the case because of the training. And so they generated 75 cents out of every new dollar that came into the industry for the next 2 years.
Oh, wow. Taking 75 share of the market. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so they were part of a global financial organization that started sending teams from all over the world to figure out what are these people doing? Yeah. And from that, I realized this works, right? It's not perfect, but it works. And so it started this 20-year journey of helping people better understand what trust is, how it works, and most importantly, how to build it. And so I worked with nonprofits. I worked with private sector, public sector. I worked with the Canadian military, trying to help them figure out how to build trust with the locals in Afghanistan. I've worked with families, just all over the place, applying this model and learning the whole time.
I mean,
And
as you're speaking about this, my entrepreneurial brain is going on hyper mode, and it made me think this is one skill that's required in everything you do. Like everything you do, you need to build trust with
yeah,
your colleagues. You need to, as a leader, having multiple companies, you need to build that trust with in yourself, with your subordinates, your team members, and so forth. And
yeah,
if you have multiple businesses, then if they need to communicate each other, you need to have the trust element between the companies. You need to have the trust element of both with your accountants, with your in-house bookkeeping,
your
and then
customers.
and the most importantly, your where the sales are coming from, your customers. They need to trust you,
Yeah,
because people buy from people. They don't buy things; they buy from people. And this
yeah,
is one of the major driving forces that, I mean, especially in the coaching industry. People don't, somebody could have a premium program, someone could have a cheap one, and they could both be doing the same thing. But if you go for the premium one because you trust that person more, and that's why because they're able to instill that trust within you, they're able to charge higher fees compared to
yeah,
somebody else who is not able to do so. The skills you are talking about apply across the board for
yeah,
everything, personal and professional relationships.
yeah. And we've seen there's tons of research that tells us that retention rates are higher,
Yes.
the engagement's higher,
Yeah.
people are happier,
Yeah.
customers are more loyal, you're
Yeah.
more innovative.
Yeah.
There's just this host of things, and you're bang on.
Yeah.
The more senior we become, the less direct control we have over outcomes.
Yes.
The
Absolutely.
more all of our goals and objectives become dependent on the actions of others.
Yeah. And they need to be as well, because otherwise, if you are doing everything yourself, then you're not achieving much. No one ever, got to the top by themselves. You have to, you take a whole community with you, and it has
Right.
to. And in order for you to do that, you need to trust your team members, and you need to have your team members trust you, and especially your leadership, and the fact that you are true, honest, and authentic. And even if you
Right.
are as a person, sometimes that doesn't come across as well. And
Yes.
and this is a major factor. You think, well, I am honest, but you're not able to convey that across to your clients or to team members.
Yeah, that's such a good point, right? Because I talk to people about the different levers we can pull to build trust. I think there are 10 levers, and I leave people with very practical applied approaches. But I'll say to them, okay, so 3 of the levers are benevolence, integrity, and ability. Benevolence is a belief you've got my best interest at heart.
Yeah.
Integrity is, do I follow through on my promises and do my actions line up with my values?
Yeah.
And ability is, do I have the confidence to do what I say I'm going to do?
Yeah.
I explain those levers to a senior executive and they say, well, I do all those things.
Mm.
And I say, says who?
Yeah.
Because if it's me telling you that I'm those things, that carries very little freight. You actually have to believe it
Yeah.
for it to have an impact. And, when I work with families, I'll say to the parents, I'll say, who here has their kid's best interest at heart? How many hands do you think go up? Like,
All the parents.
all of them, right? When I flip the question, I say, how many of your kids would say that? It's about a third,
Yeah.
and it's somewhat hesitant. So if it's not obvious and
Yeah.
it's not landing in a place where it's supposed to be obvious, then how well are leaders doing at showing benevolence, showing integrity, showing ability? Because it's, I come on your podcast and I want to do the best job I can. I want to be one of the best guests you've ever had. But how do I do that without asking you? What makes a great guest? Right?
100%.
And
Yeah.
how do we do that without asking some of your listeners? What makes a great guest?
Yeah.
What gets your attention? What brings you in? And so, I've been applying this stuff for 20 years now. And it's one of the things that differentiates me. There's a bunch of pieces of my model that don't get covered in most of the trust literature. And it's because of the journey that I took.
Mm.
Right? It's because of the hardship I experienced. Sometimes a hard road is a good teacher.
The hard road is always the best teacher. I really, absolutely, truly believe in this.
in order for you to reach greater heights, you have to go through roads which are the hardest and the most rotten, and you will come out. If you go through some path and you don't come out with bruises and scratches and you're not bleeding, that road hasn't been hard enough. It hasn't taught you enough. And so the harder your life, the more prepared you are to arrive at greater heights. And I truly believe it. But I also think hard roads can do two things. They can either make you better or bitter. And it's your choice which one you take. But if you choose to be better, you have more authority, you have more integrity, you hold more respect, you have more self-confidence, and you're able to perform better. And that in turn instills a lot of trust in those people who are working with you or following you, including your children. Because when you were talking about kids, I thought about for a second, I thought, let me think an honest answer for my children. And I'm a Desi mom. I call myself a Desi mom. Like, I'm a South Asian woman. I was born and brought up in UK, but I don't give a talk, I'm a Pakistani woman as far as I'm concerned when it comes to as a parent. So I don't, the soft whatever, I'm not a soft mom. I'm a very strict mom in certain disciplines, and very cool in the other as well, because I'm a very hip mom as well. But when it comes to education and discipline and making your bed and blah blah, I'm very, very much got South Asian mentality, and there's no, you don't talk back to mom and whatever else. But having said that, I think when I was looking back, if I asked that question to both my kids, hands down, they would say, my mom's got my best interest at heart, because they do trust me, and I trust in their judgment, because I know whatever decisions they make, they'll be correct, because I'm not making the decisions for them. I'm encouraging them to make the decisions, be it for education, whatever else, because they have to study hard, but what they choose to study is up to them and so forth. But I was thinking the reason why I'm able to do that is because not only is how I react with them, because my kids see how I behave with my clients, with my relatives, with people around me, and how hard I work in my multiple businesses, yet it's around them. So they're my priority, even though I've got 10 businesses on the go, they're my priority. And so that all of that action combined, not just one element, all of that action combined instills that trust in them. And this is something that I can't teach, and I can't, I won't be able to tell them to trust me. They have to do it or they don't. But when I look at my life, and my life can be seen as very, very hard. It has been very, very hard. But again, because of that, my kids would respect me. They do respect me, and they see, okay, mom's been through that, but she's loving me. She does this, and they are able to move ahead. I think that's. I love that. Your own personal journey can become a source for people to respect you and to trust you, because you've been there, done that.
And I have a relentlessly positive story when it comes to my kids. I'm on their side, right? I'm in their corner. Always, when my oldest was 12 years old, he looked at me one day and he said, Dad, even when you're upset with me, I know it's about what's best for me. And he said, you've always got my back.
Always.
And once they have that story, once they have that narrative, they interpret our actions differently. Right? And so when we are firm, or when we set boundaries, or when they come to us and ask us questions, they know that what they're getting is honest and caring and deeply held. No one cares about my kids as much as I do. And they have conversations with me that I never would have had with my parents. I swear to you, there are times when they're telling me things and I want to look over my shoulder and go, dude, your dad might hear this. Oh, wait a minute, I'm sitting right here. And so, we start that. And one of the challenges that we face is, when I think about my kids, I think about today and tomorrow and next week and next month and next year and 10 years down the road. And I want the best for them. But I want them to engage in behaviors that are good for them for years from now. And I don't hold myself to that standard. Right? And our kids are thinking about right now. And so we need to be able to come alongside them and help them be successful in the moment. So that we earn the right to talk about the future. And so often we're trying to get them to do things that'll help them down the road without getting their buy-in, without including them in the conversation. And this
But
is
without winning their trust, we have to win the trust first. That has to be either even if it's done, even if they gave you that to you as a child, as an adult, they may not trust you as fully. And therefore,
right.
a trust is earned, not demanded.
Exactly. So, a big part of what I do is I help people understand the different levers we can pull
Right.
and how to pull them, right? Because we all have the ability to build trust. Some are just better than others.
Yeah.
And so those who aren't very good have a lever that they pull. And usually it's the ability lever,
Yeah.
right? I have these kinds of credentials, this much experience, this background. Those who are better at building trust have multiple levers. Those who are really good have multiple levers and they know when to pull which one.
Mm.
And so my journey has been helping people better understand what the levers are, show them how to pull them, and get them practicing and experiencing. Oh, so this is what it looks like to pull the benevolence lever. This is what it looks like to pull the integrity lever. This is how I pull the ability lever in a way that actually lands, right? So instead of me just deciding what good looks like, I actually include the other person in the conversation.
Yeah.
This is what the context looks like, right? Because context is another area that, so I think that uncertainty is a combination of, or trust is a combination of uncertainty and vulnerability.
Oh, both. Hands down, hands down. I
Yeah.
think so. I think you have to open yourself up and be vulnerable for
Yeah.
somebody else to trust you. And also because if they trust you, they're being vulnerable with you. And
Right.
so in order for them to trust you, you have to give first and share your vulnerability with them. When you were saying this, I remember having a conversation because of one of my other businesses that I'm building at the moment. And I'm buying this business at the moment. And I remember having this conversation just a few days ago. And everything you just mentioned, I think I did it, but I did it unconsciously because that's just part of my character. So I shared the vulnerability part, like why and whatever else. And because I'm a full-time mother and a business person second. So I shared the fact that, the reason why I want to do this because the half term and kids will be on holiday. So I'm able to take time off. Otherwise I can't, or I had to move the call around because I have to go pick and drop my daughter. I share that very fact that I'm a single parent and my life revolves around my kids. I never apologize for it. I do it that way. And so then I shared my thoughts about what I wanted from them. So I shared a lot of personal things, which is being vulnerable. I'm very true to my words. I do what I say I'm going to do, and I follow through. So they've seen that from me, and therefore we've got a sticking point which we were trying to find an agreement with. They're a bit concerned, and I, unfortunately, because of the transactions I can't back on. I can't compromise on that. And I was trying to explain to him that you have to trust me, and as I trust you. But I showed him how I trust them. Right. And by being vulnerable and how I'm taking them for what they're saying, etc., etc. And it showed that I didn't realize I did that without even thinking because it was just instinctive. I was thinking though, ability, I can do it because I'm very good at marketing and I'm very good at business, so that's already done. And I'll explain to them what my plans are with the company. Vulnerability to show so that they can trust me because I'm trusting them, sharing personal details with them.
Yeah.
And the final thing is about having empathy, understand their concerns, and how I can alleviate it and what can I do to help them, and so all of those factors I did, and that's the reason why I'm very good at what I do because I didn't think that was the case, but that's how I built trust because somebody else was asking me a question. I said, well, you just speak to them and be truthful and honest, but that wasn't it. It was more than that. It's what you described, but I did it without realizing what I did.
Right. And so we start to think about what is the vulnerability that they're experiencing.
Yeah.
Right? How are they vulnerable? Well, this is something they built, they care about, they want to see it succeed.
Yeah.
That's where their anxiety is. And so you've shown them the ability. Now the question is around integrity, around benevolence. What are their best interests? What does success look like for them? How do you help them get there? These are all the different pieces that we start to pull, right?
Yeah.
And so trust is uncertainty times vulnerability gives us a level of perceived risk. And we each have a threshold of risk that we can tolerate. And if we go beyond that threshold, we don't trust. And if we're beneath it, then we do. And so early in relationships, uncertainty is really high, which means that vulnerability has to be low for us to still fit below that threshold. But as that relationship goes along and deepens, then the range of vulnerability we can tolerate starts to grow. And, a big part of what I do is help people start conversations, communicate effectively around, let's close the gap between how much I should be trusted and how much I actually am. And the reason I wrote the book and the reason I have, I've got a master class and I've got in-depth courses, all of these are aimed at scaling what I know and what I do. I was working with one of my students in Luxembourg, and what I do with all my students is I get them to apply the concepts. I get them to pick someone to practice with, right? Because so much of our training and learning and growing is fire and forget. I download a bunch of content to you and you go away and then you try to apply it and you're like, what did he say again? How did that work? But now I've had this journey where I'm really trying to help people apply the concepts. And so I'm working with this one student, and the relationship he picks is his two sons. They're 5 and 3. And he's become estranged from them because he's been working away for most of their lives. And he says to me, the relationship's broken. I don't think it's ever going to be possible to fix it. I get upset, anxious. I'm so nervous. I always say the wrong thing. I get angry and frustrated, and they're scared of me. And after the 3-month course, with coaching and training and showing him the model, his final report was, everything has completely changed. My children run to me now. They throw themselves on me. And he said, they fight over who gets to sit next to me at dinner. They beg me to read them bedtime stories. They can't get enough of me. That's the impact I want to have more broadly. I felt like I was dropping grains of sand in the ocean. I need people to help me pick up great big rocks and make huge splashes.
I love that. I absolutely love that. We will have the links to your books in a bit anyway, but what's the name of your book? Please do share that with us, because I think I want to get your book as well.
Right. It's called Building Trust, Exceptional Leadership in an Uncertain World. And it's really intended. So I've laid out everything in there. I've laid out the whole model. I lay out, practical applied approaches to actually pulling the levers. I give case studies and examples, and I've written it in a way that people can actually approach it. It's not written like an academic. It's written, there's stories, there's, people who read it say it's a really approachable book. The masterclass is 3 hours in length. It's 34 sort of 5-minute segments that include role plays and exercises. When I do the deeper stuff, I'll do these 8-week courses where it's 2 weeks of content, which includes individual coaching, group coaching, exercises, practice. And what people find is they say, it sounds easy and it looked like it should be easy. But then when I tried it, it felt like a new exercise. I felt awkward and uncomfortable, but the response was so overwhelmingly positive, right? Because that first conversation is, I'm taking a trust course and I want someone to practice with. And I was wondering if you'd be willing to practice with me, be my trust buddy. And people are like, really? Well, yeah,
it's something very unique. I mean, I've read so many books on leadership and mindset, because I'm a mindset coach, money mindset coach specifically. Yeah. And I had never considered this, this being an aspect that I had to learn. I think I've just learned it by default by all the training I've been through. But
you're innately good at it.
Yeah, and I'm naturally I'm just naturally a very honest person, and I thought that's the reason why people trust me, because I'm just very honest. But I think there's a deeper meaning to it. There's a deeper level that I wasn't even aware, and it's very subconscious, but it's something that can be honed even further to improve the business even more and to have a greater impact. Because I think in order for us to have a greater impact, we need people to trust us. Yeah. And I remember this one thing that I remember my mother always did. My mother she was just such a typical South Asian woman, but she was a mother to mother to everyone. When I say everyone, she was everyone's mother. It doesn't matter if you're older than her, or younger than her, she's everyone's mom. And she would go up and tell strangers off, and she'd slap, because South Asians slap. She would go and slap strangers. I'm not kidding, right? I've never seen people turn around and be disrespectful to her. They actually respected her, listened to what she said, and she got away with it. And it wasn't like, but it was like, as a child, I was flabbergasted. Like, you've just told the stranger off. We were slapped like strangers, like, who the hell do you think you are? And the stranger would listen to her and they wouldn't talk back to her or anything. but she must have had this ability to get people to trust her, because her reaction was not selfish. There was obviously a different motive, and she's coming across, and she literally came across as your mom anyway. It doesn't matter what your age was. So nobody talked back to her, nobody disrespected her, and they will listen to her. And I've always been astonished. I thought this is just a natural gift, but she must have had this ability to make even strangers trust her and allow her to even get physically abusive to them. And she obviously she's not going to beat them up, but just like a slap here, you know, who the hell do you think you are? Like a, you know, like a mother would. And people responded very positively. I've never ever saw anyone, I mean anyone, hold that kind of authority that she did with old people, obviously, you know, but strangers too. And everybody, you know, nobody crossed the line with her with the boundaries wise. But at the same time, they loved her. They absolutely loved and adored her because she was so generous, so loving, so giving. If she's eating something, if you've come there, doesn't matter if you're full or not, she will give you literally, you have to eat with her. She'll feed you at the same time. You just have no option to say no. You just, if you're there when she's eating or she's doing something, you're having a portion of her food. There's no option about it. That's how generous she was. Forget everything else with the food. So that came through in her personality. But that is a next level element of building trust, that this person has your best interest at heart, and therefore you just you never ever get antagonistic. You never get into antagonistic you know, a reaction to her, because you never, you know, you're like, okay, she's a mom, okay, fair enough.
And so much integrity,
and so much integrity. She was just so honest. Like it was just
these are my values.
I'm
gonna, doesn't matter what the situation is, these are my values.
Yeah.
And I'm about what's best for those around me. So just oozes benevolence, right?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And benevolence isn't always about being nice. This is one of the mistakes that people make, is they think, oh, we're going to sing Kumbaya and we're going to, but if I'm a leader and somebody comes to me and says, I want to get a promotion, then benevolence is actually saying to them, okay, so I'm going to hold you to higher account. I'm going to put you in more difficult positions and stretch you. I'm going to expose you more to the rest of the organization, because if I promote you, I need to be able to make the case to everybody else. And so it's about to get harder. And that's what benevolence looks like. And, you know, when my son came to me and said, Dad, I want to get a baseball scholarship, I said, okay, well, that means you have to work hard. You've got to eat well. You've got to study hard and get good grades. You've got to, you know, have good relationships with your coaches so they'll recommend you. You've got to have good relationships with your teammates so that if scouts come and look, they see that you're a good teammate. And so all of these things that parents harp on their kids about, all of a sudden now became, instead of me nagging him, it became, Dad's got my back.
Yeah.
The whole story changed.
Yeah.
Right. And that was a place for us to bond and connect, where I was able to say, you know, how, and you know, he came to me at one point and he said, we're not going to be very good this year. You know, our team's terrible. And he said, we're going to lose a lot. Like we might lose every game. And I said, well, you need to redefine what success is.
Yeah.
What is success for you? What would a good season look like for you? And he said, well, control the things I can control. Have good relationships with my coaches. The reason we're not going to be very good is it's a younger team. I'm one of the older guys. So I need to mentor some of my colleagues, you know, mentor some of the younger guys. And I need to work hard and try to get better myself. And so as we were going through the season, he would say, oh God, we're losing every game. Like we're terrible. And I said, how are you doing? Right? Against the metrics that you set, the things that you have control over. And, you know, he made the all-star team. His coaches loved him. His teammates loved him. And he had a good season. He was able to define success around terms that he had control over. So, yeah. So I love the stuff I do. And the impact that I have.
I think that's really, really powerful. And I think that's a good point to wrap this up. So we could carry on talking forever, Darryl. I think this topic is absolutely, it's blown my mind. It's very rare that I come across a new topic that I hadn't considered before, because I consider myself an avid learner and I'm always learning about different things all the time, including AI now. I had never considered learning about trust as much as I have learned from you in this short conversation. So we're going to have you back on Money Talkies. But for now, I think we're going to wrap this up. So tell us, Darryl, how can we connect with you? Where can we find you on the internet?
go to trustunlimited.com, and that's my website. There's a blog section there that's got articles and podcasts connected to it. You can find me on LinkedIn, Darryl Stickel. You can email me, Darryl@trustunlimited.com. You can find the book anywhere that books are sold online.
I'm gonna get. Is it available on Audible? Because that's where
it is.
Okay, I'm gonna get your Audible book because I think that's my next. I'm gonna get your Audible book.
Yeah. So the Audible book the book's available on Audible as an ebook and on Amazon or any of the other in paperback. The masterclass is available on my website at trustunlimited.com. So, dip your toe, get the book and read it, start applying the concepts, and then see if you want to take it to a deeper level. Because this is a skill we can build, right?
100%, 100%. And I until this moment, I hadn't even considered it. I just thought you naturally have it or you don't. And I just didn't realize like anything else, it's a skill that you can build on. You may have, you may be gifted at it. Like I think I have a natural gift for it, but there's always room to improve. And especially as I grow and the more I become entrusted with multiple companies and different, as I grow as an entrepreneur, the more I need to build on this ability to have, to instill trust in the people in my ability to run the companies as well as to be able to run them successfully. So I think it's definitely a skill worth having. But anyway, thank you so much for being such an amazing guest today. I think we're definitely going to speak to you on Money Talkies. But for now, thank you so much for being a guest today, Darryl.
Thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for listening.
And thank you for listening to me and Darryl today on Friday Future. I will be back with another amazing guest, finding out how they change their life by changing the mindset. Until the next time, this is Gull signing off. Take care and bye for now.